I have always wanted to buy a waffle maker. Every time I see one, I think, yeah, that will be fun. But then reality hits. I don't really have room for another random kitchen gadget, so I never got one. But then, scrolling on Amazon one day, I saw this silicone waffle mold for the air fryer. Game changer. And before I could even think twice, I hit order. Now the question wasn't should I get a waffle maker. The question was, what can I actually make with this thing? Something easy, obviously, but also something fun. And if you know me, you already know where this is going. It had to be a carnivore breakfast. So here's what I started with. On screen, it looks nice and simple. A block of cheddar cheese, about 100 grams, 2 eggs, and a few slices of bacon. Totally reasonable. But, and this is important, what you see here and what it actually becomes by the end of this video are two very different things. It's kind of the story of this whole experiment. I've put the exact ingredients in the description and they might pop up on the screen too. Just keep in mind, this was the plan. What actually happens in the kitchen? Yeah, that's coming. My first goal was simple. Shred half of this cheddar cheese, just half. That was the plan. But here's the problem. It was shredding so nicely that I just kept going. You know that feeling when something is oddly satisfying and you don't stop even though you know you should? Yeah, that was me with this cheese. Before I knew it, I had shredded way more than half. Honestly, that should have been my first warning sign. Like, hey, maybe this is the universe telling you this little project is about to get messy. But if there's one thing that I'm good at, it's ignoring signs. So, more cheese it was. I scooped up the freshly shredded cheese, put it in a bowl, and set it aside like everything was totally normal. Spoiler, it wasn't. Next up, the bacon. Nothing complicated here. I just took a few slices, chopped them into smaller pieces, and set them aside to cook later. At this stage, the bacon felt like the most reliable part of the whole plan. Bacon never lets you down. Back to the bowl of cheese that I'd already shredded way too much of. Time to crack in both eggs and give it a good mix. The idea here is simple. Eggs plus cheese equals your chaffle base. Once it all comes together, it feels like one mixture instead of cheese here and egg there. In theory, this should have been smooth sailing. In practice, well, you will see. So now it was time for the big moment. Actually filling the waffle mold. I set it into the air fryer tray, grabbed my cheesy egg mixture, and started scooping it in. At first, everything seemed fine. But then I noticed something. I was running out of mixture way too fast. By the time I got to the end, I only had enough to fill 3 out of the 5 spots. That's when it hit me. Remember earlier when I got carried away shredding cheese and ignored the sign? Yeah, maybe I should have listened. Because here I was, already short on mixture before I had even started cooking. So what did I do? I grabbed more cheese, shredded the rest of it, and cracked in 2 extra eggs. And in the middle of all that chaos, I totally forgot to press record. So yeah. There's this mysterious in-between step that only lives in my own memory. As I was about to fill the last 2 spots, I suddenly thought, wait a second, shouldn't I have buttered this mold first? You know, just to make sure nothing sticks. So now, without even planning it, I had created a little side experiment. 3 ungreased waffles versus 2 greased waffles. Which ones would win? No idea. But I set the air fryer to 190 degrees Celsius for 10 minutes, crossed my fingers, and let it run. While the chaffles were busy cooking in the air fryer, I turned my attention back to the bacon. I tossed the chopped pieces into a pan and let them sizzle away, filling the kitchen with that classic bacon smell. Honestly, at this point, the bacon was the most stable part of the whole plan. And then, mid-bacon, I opened the fridge and spotted something. Sitting there, looking a little sad, was a leftover burger patty. It had been in there for a few days, and I wasn't even sure what I was saving it for. But since this video was already going in about 10 different directions, I figured, why not? If I'm cooking bacon, I might as well throw the patty in right after. At this point, it felt less like a recipe and more like a rescue mission for random ingredients I had lying around. The air fryer beeped, and that meant the first round of chaffles was done. I pulled them out carefully, set them aside on the counter, and let them rest for a bit. I didn't even take a close look yet. I figured I would deal with them once the rest of the kitchen chaos settled down. I cooked one side of the patty for a few minutes and then flipped it around. Then I noticed the bowl. I still had some of that cheese and egg mixture left over. Honestly, there probably was enough to make another chaffle, but for some reason, I just didn't feel right about it. Plus, I don't trust my eyeballing skills anymore. Call it uneasy, call it laziness, but I didn't want to go through the mold process again. So instead, I did the easiest thing I could think of. I poured it straight into the pan. No plan, no idea what I was making, just something. It cooked up kind of like a cheesy omelette, and after flipping it once, I figured, okay, this isn't a total disaster. The patty was sitting there next to it, and that's when it hit me. Why not just stack them? So I put the patty right on top of the cheese and egg creation, as if I knew what I was doing. At this stage, the recipe had gone completely off the rails, but honestly I was kind of enjoying it, and it seemed pretty easy overall. With the patty and that mystery omelette thing doing their thing in the pan, I finally turned back to the chaffles. Time to see what I was working with. I gently pushed them out of the silicone mold, and to my surprise, they all released smoothly. They actually came out in one piece, which felt like a small victory at this point. But as soon as I flipped them over, I could see the bottoms weren't quite there yet. They looked a little pale and undercooked, like they needed just a bit more time to crisp up. So I separated them out from each other, laid them flat, and put them back into the air fryer for another 3 or 4 minutes. My thinking was, let's give them a proper finish and see if they'll come out looking more like actual waffles. After those extra few minutes in the air fryer, the chaffles came out looking way better. Crispy on the edges, golden on the outside, finally starting to resemble something you'd actually want to eat. Now it was time to assemble. Except I still hadn't really figured out what I was assembling. So I did what I usually do in these situations. I just started playing around with the pieces, shuffling them on the board and trying to make sense of it. Eventually, I decided to keep things simple. I took 3 of the chaffles and topped them with bacon. Easy, reliable, and guaranteed to taste good. For one of the triangles, I also added the very last bit of sour cream I had left in the fridge, just enough to cover the top. That gave me 3 slightly different bacon variations to start with. And with the 3 bacon top chaffles set aside, it was time to face the bigger challenge, assembling what I started calling the beast. I flipped the last 2 waffles around, trying to figure out the best way to build this thing. For some reason, I thought pressing them down a little would make them look bigger. It didn't. They stayed exactly the same size, just flatter. Then I went back to the pan and grabbed my improvised burger egg cheese patty creation. This odd stack of food that had sort of made itself along the way was about to become the centerpiece. I placed it carefully on top of one of the waffles, then set another waffle right over the top like a lid. And just like that, the beast was born. A strange but glorious chaffle burger hybrid. It didn't look as neat as I pictured in my head, so I came up with this genius idea. I would trim around the patty to make the whole thing look more presentable. Like maybe I could shape it into something perfectly round, restaurant style. Yeah, that didn't really work out. You can't exactly carve a clean circle out of melted cheese, eggs, and waffles. But I gave it a shot anyway, just to feel like I tried. In the end, it looked a little better, or maybe I just convinced myself it did. Time for the real test. Eating this whole experiment. I started with the bacon and sour cream waffle, and honestly, it disappeared so fast I barely remember it. Either it was absolutely delicious, or I was just way too excited to finally be eating at this point. Probably a bit of both. Then I moved on to the wannabe burger. The beast. I took that first bite and wow, against all odds it was amazing. Crispy chaffles, melty cheese, the burger egg stack in the middle, it actually worked. And in that moment I knew, I'm definitely making this again. Next time with a little more planning, a little less chaos, but the same end result. Because this was one of those kitchen accidents that turns out way better than expected. At this point, I just wanted to turn the camera off and enjoy the meal in peace. So that's exactly what I did. So yeah, what started out as me just wanting to test out this little silicone waffle mold turned into a full-on breakfast experiment. With a few ups, a few downs, and one very unexpected burger beast creation. But honestly, That's the fun of it. Not every recipe has to be perfect from start to finish. Sometimes the best meals come out of just rolling with what you've got. If you try this yourself, or if you have got your own creative spin on chaffles, let me know in the comments. I'd love to see what you come up with, especially if it's as chaotic as mine. Thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, leave a like and a comment, and I'll meet you here next time on Meet Carnivore. I'm really glad I didn't call this channel the Carnivore Chef. That would have been a disaster.